Solving complex challenges is in our DNA. Go back to our roots and you'll see why. Surbana Jurong Group was formed in 2015 through a merger of the consulting arms of Housing Development Board and Jurong Town Corporation, who played critical roles in Singapore's development. Today, Surbana Jurong is a global multidisciplinary consultancy group in 120 offices across 40 countries. We are architects, engineers, designers, planners and specialists driven by progressive thinking. By designing and delivering quality housing, workspaces, roads, rail, hydropower and critical infrastructure, we are redefining cities. Building cities, shaping lives, expresses how every project is an opportunity to fulfill aspirations and enrich lives. Our logo's bold red dot radiates creativity and innovation, emblematic of Singapore, where the group is headquartered. Surbana Jurong has grown from strength to strength through transformative acquisitions. The group offers comprehensive consultancy solutions, anchored on sustainability and enabled by technology, to partner communities around the world in building a smart, sustainable and resilient future.
Climate change, perhaps the most serious and urgent challenge facing all life on our planet, underscores a pressing need for swifter action. The consequences of further global warming cannot be overstated. Powerful drivers are shaping our collective future. It is critical in these fast-moving times to stop and think about the future we're each creating every day through our actions or inaction. What future are you shaping?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the World City Summit 2021 and welcome to this virtual session, Facing the Future with Confidence. I'm your MC, Deborah. Please note that simultaneous interpretation in Mandarin is available in a separate channel. Before we begin, I would like to announce the launch of Singapore Unlimited, a publication from the Centre for Livable Cities. This publication draws on research and first-person interviews with pioneering experts. It provides an account of Singapore's transformation into a leading global city and sustainable nation-state. You can download free versions of the book using the QR code. Today, we are privileged to have with us distinguished speakers who will share their prepared remarks. This will be followed by a discussion moderated by Prof Chan Heng Chee, Ambassador at Large and Professor at the Lee Kuan Yew Centre for Innovative Cities. Our speakers are Mr. Mochamad Ridwan Kamil, Governor of the region of West Java, Indonesia, and the Chief Economist of the Ministry of Housing and Urban-Rural Development, Mr. Yang Baojun. We are also joined by Dr. Joachim von Amsberg, Vice President of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, overseeing policy and strategy, and the Mayor of Bilbao, Mr. Juan Alberto. Mr. Soichiro Takashima, the Mayor of Fukuoka, is also here with us today. Also joining us are Mr. Chintan Raveshia, Cities Leader, Southeast Asia, Arup, and Mr. Loh Chin Hua, the Chief Executive Officer of Keppel Corporation. To kick off the session, may I now invite Governor Kamil to share his remarks. Governor Kamil, please.
I'm now the governor of 50 million people of West Java in Indonesia. Before I was a city mayor, the capital city. I'm happy to see Professor Chan Heng Chee, my mentor. I think we are all agree that this disruption really creates a new mindset for us here in Indonesia. We need to prepare many new policy responding to climate change, responding to any disruption in economic, social, or disaster. First, the last 2 years as a governor, I created a blueprint, what we call West Java Resilience Province. This blueprint gives a good foundation for our development in the next coming years to prepare for any disruption, any change, including the climate change. As you know, West Java, with the 50 million people, we are also prone to disaster. We have number of disaster every year, more or less around 3,000. Most of them are hydrology-related disaster also. And COVID is very tough for me as a West Java governor, because 50 million is like South Korea. Yeah, so my responsibility is similar to the South Korean president, saving 50 million people, but my budget is only 1% of his. So, more challenging for us here in Indonesia. And also, I was elected last year as a chairman for renewable energy in regional level. So I am in command for 150 cities, region, and province to create a better future for Indonesia in relation of reducing our dependence to fossil fuel and more to renewable energy. By the study of Stanford universities, we learned that 2050, Indonesia could be 100% renewable energy. So the study shows the balance between the energy needs of Indonesia in 2050 and also with our potential in wind, water, biofuels, water, and many more. So we are hoping we can achieve. But ladies and gentlemen, everything is very political. Even though scientifically Indonesia could be 100% renewable energy in 2050, but the central government stated only around 30% renewable energy. So I think coming from professional and also university, I learned this political will is still not too strong, in my opinion. We need to push this political commitment only 30% to maximize into 100% renewable energy in 2050. We are also making local initiative. For example, we are building now the biggest solar cell investment in Indonesia in West Java with Masdar from Abu Dhabi. They are creating the largest floating solar cell because from technicalities, flat surface on the water is considered the best for installing and harvesting the solar energy. And I'm very happy West Java is chosen to be these projects. installing 145 megawatt of floating PV in Indonesia also. We are also giving a leadership example. I'm the first governor to use electric vehicle in Indonesia. I'm using this Hyundai, the only available affordable on the market, as an example, because we need to change that in West Java by the year 2030, 9 years from now, 30% of vehicles circulated in my region must come from electric vehicle as well. And we are also giving more project waste to energy. We are forcing 27 cities in my command to transform the municipal waste into energy. We are creating ongoing project, for example, of changing the municipal waste, becoming the briquette to replace the coal, and replace the coal used by the cement factory using these projects. And also we are now bidding 3 to 4 locations also on this one. And we are also recycling now becoming a new culture. We are having technology only in West Java to change the plastic bag into the market, 100% recycle using the circular economy. So we are now in the forefront of these projects. Ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, we learned that we share our own future, we share our own challenging future. We need to work together because in the perspective of climate change, no one is independent. No one is really 100% independent. Everybody needs everybody. My country needs your country. ASEAN needs other regional organization, and so on and so on. This is for the love of our planet. So I work within my policy as a governor and also architect. So I use using the blueprint for my future, using the policy of forcing my population to transform into new lifestyle of renewable energy. At the end of the day, I'm hoping 2050 Indonesia 100% renewable energy become true with the new political will, not only 30%, and at the end contributing to greener, cleaner world and planet that we are living right now. So I think that is more or less my remarks on this discussion. Hopefully what I'm doing now will have some impact in the next coming years. Thank you. Back to moderator.
Thank you, Governor Kamil. Next, let me invite Mr. Yang to share. Mr. Yang, please.
Dear Professor Chan Heng Chee and colleagues, it's my pleasure to attend this online session, and I would like to take this opportunity to discuss with you on the issues of carbon peak and carbon neutralization, to discuss the strategies in the field of urban and rural construction to cope with the challenges of climate change. Global warming has brought great harm to the world. In the past 50 years, we have seen more than 11,000 disasters have occurred in the world, and this has brought great challenges. The Chinese government has been paying special attention, and President Xi Jinping has said in the 25th General Assembly in the UN, China will enhance the state's independent contribution and adopt more effective policies and measures. Carbon dioxide emissions will strive to peak before 2030 and strive to achieve carbon neutralization by 2060. In March of this year, it was repeated repeatedly emphasized at the relevant meetings that we will build a clean, low carbon, safe, efficient energy system. We should implement pollution and carbon reduction actions in key industries, promoting green manufacturing, improving energy saving standards in construction, and accelerating the formation of green and low carbon transportation model. At the same time, we can see in the report of the 19th National Congress of Communist Party of China, the outline of the 14th five-year plan and the 2021 government work report all have been put forward the clear requirements for greener and low carbon strategy. Currently, we can see that energy, industry, urban and rural construction and transportation are the four major areas to achieve carbon peak and carbon neutral. The energy consumption in the field of urban and rural construction is mainly in the construction and infrastructure operation. According to the country's need, we are discussing about the roadmap and the schedule of the carbon peak strategy. Our main mindset is to establish the country planning and the community construction and have an impact on carbon reduction. At the same time, we want to reduce the large-scale demolition, and construction will greatly reduce the production of building materials and carbon emissions of the building industry. According to the needs of the states, we will emphasize 5 aspects. The first, we need to strengthen the building energy conservation, mainly includes improving the energy conservation level of new buildings, strengthening the energy conservation, transforming the existing buildings, and strengthening the operation management of the building. Second, optimize the energy consumption structure, including vigorously promoting the application of solar energy, optimizing the building heating model, and promoting the electrification of the building energy. And third, to strengthen the systematic construction of the city, mainly including optimizing the layout of the city, improving the quality of the ecological environment, strengthening the building of the infrastructure, and strengthening the construction of the residential community. The fourth is to overall plan the urban and rural construction, including strengthening the green and low carbon construction of the rural areas and speeding up the modernization of rural housing and village construction. Fifth, the transformation of the production and lifestyle, mainly including comprehensively promoting the green construction, improving the utilization rate of the green building materials, and advocating the green low carbon lifestyle. In order to ensure the implementation of these 5 tasks, we'll implement more effective measures should the terms of standard measurement, development model, and mechanism construction and policy support to ensure the carbon peak and carbon neutralization can be achieved on schedule. Dear colleagues, the challenges brought by climate change are realistic, severe, and long-term. However, as a participant, contributor, and leader in the construction of the global ecological civilization, China strives to build a fair, reasonable, and win-win global environmental governance system. I firmly believe that as long as we work together to make concerted efforts, work together in the same boat, and face the future with confidence, we will achieve the goal of carbon peak and carbon neutral in the field of urban and rural construction and leave a clean and beautiful world to the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Let me now invite the contribution of Dr. Joachim von Amsberg. Dr. Joachim, please.
Thank you very much for inviting the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank to this World City Summit. And congratulations to choosing this focus on confidence, maybe a little far-fetched in midst of this so severe pandemic that hits all of us in such unprecedented ways. And yet, I think this focus on confidence is actually quite well placed. Because just like cities have managed challenges in the past, they will manage the pandemic, they will manage the challenges of the future, whether those challenges are environmental, social, or others. Cities have always been at the forefront of economic development. They demonstrate the power of aggregation, the power of connectivity. And cities have, and they have learned how to deal with externalities like local pollution. They've learned how to deal with challenges, how to help people live together in crowded spaces. So let me talk about the environmental challenge foremost here, the topic of our panel. A little bit like a city. The world is becoming a crowded place where collective action is needed in order to tackle a fundamental threat to our well-being, which is climate change. City managers have known for decades, actually for centuries, that a combination of regulation and market incentives is needed to tackle common goods problems, externalities, or pollution problems. For centuries, city managers have built sanitation and other infrastructure to deal with infectious water and insect-borne diseases like typhoid or the plague. City managers have successfully dealt with air pollution, the infamous fog of London that killed Londoners during the last century, for example. More recently, city managers in Beijing have proven how to profoundly improve air pollution in what used to be one of the most polluted cities, literally within a few years. So, taking that experience, dealing with local environmental problems to global environmental problems, global awakening to the challenge that the actions that have so far been agreed are grossly insufficient to achieve the necessary targets to control global warming under the Paris Agreement. Country after country have or are now committing to more ambitious net zero carbon targets. With China's recent announcement, with the US's return to international cooperation, we will hopefully witness the emergence of the next phase of global consensus to take the necessary actions to battle climate change. This is necessary to literally save cities. Coastal cities probably illustrate most visibly and most starkly the threat of sea level rise and flooding from global warming. It is also in the cities where most of the action needs to be taken to combat global warming, simply because most of the economic activities is concentrated in cities. Urban wealth and prosperity will need to be generated with less energy, and energy needs to be generated with less or no carbon emissions. Urban transport needs to be revolutionized to provide mobility with less consumption of energy and less consumption of valuable urban space. Now, new technologies can be harnessed to bring about this revolution in our cities. Digital connectivity has proven during the pandemic to be a reasonable, though certainly not perfect, substitute for physical connectivity. So coming out of the pandemic, we will see the evolution of hybrid work and living forms that are bound to change the physical shape of cities and the demand for mobility services. New transport technologies can provide mobility service in a more efficient and sustainable way. The combination of shared vehicles, electric vehicles, self-driven vehicles, and effective integration of mass and individual transport are bound to change not only the nature of urban transport, but the very physical shape of our cities. So cities built around the needs for driving and parking space for individually owned vehicles may quickly become obsolete and will be replaced by new models of transport and space use. We don't know yet exactly what new models of cities will emerge, exactly because technological progress and disruption will continue. But city managers have profound opportunities to shape these cities in the future to be sustainable and to be livable, and to ensure that these cities are built to support human needs and human welfare. The challenges are of such a nature and of such magnitude that the investments needed are not incremental or gradual. They require change and investment at unprecedented scale, investments in urban mass transport, high-speed digital networks, flood control, renewable energy, energy efficiency, to mention just a few areas. And that at the same time, when the world's urban population is growing, depending on what kind of numbers you use, at maybe about 1 million people every week. 1 million people every week. That's another Singapore just about every month. This means the investment needs that I just talked about are just multiplied. And I just outlined I think, the opportunity for investing in a non-incremental way into infrastructure for tomorrow in the investment boom that is required to overcome the pandemic crisis as and when countries and cities emerge from this crisis. Now, we at the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, a new multilateral development bank that was just established 6 years ago, have the exclusive mandate to finance this infrastructure for tomorrow. Infrastructure for tomorrow refers to energy, transport, urban investments that serve the needs of people and cities and make use of the opportunities that new technologies can offer. And for the reasons I mentioned, we are particularly focused on urban green infrastructure for tomorrow. We have already financed projects in urban mass transport, urban water, urban sanitation, urban flood control, urban energy supply. We at AIB offer infrastructure financing for private sector projects, for sovereign-backed public projects, for local government-backed public projects, and for public-private partnerships. We're very keen to partner with cities across Asia and beyond to tackle the tremendous challenges and the opportunities that cities face and allow the cities to face the future indeed with confidence. Thank you very much.
Dr. Joachim, may I now invite Mayor Alberto to share his remarks, please.
First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting me to participate in the World City Summit. For Bilbao, it is an honor to have taken part in all the editions of this global summit, which addresses decisive issues for the planet's future. We must be prepared to adapt to new scenarios constantly. Change is the only sure thing. The best example is the recent coronavirus crisis, a global pandemic that has had a particular impact on cities. We are at a moment of transcendental change with significant transitions on the horizon: technological, digital, energy, environmental, and social, as well as health. Bilbao has a long history of urban transformation, now rooted in a smart city development strategy, Smart Bilbao, based on international frameworks to address the challenges mentioned above. Bilbao is also committed to the 2030 Agenda and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Along the way, Bilbao has been aligned for years with the European Strategy for the Ecological and Digital Transition. At the global level, in 2020, we have signed a collaboration agreement with the World Economic Forum for Bilbao to be one of the pilot cities of the Global Smart Cities Alliance on Technology Governance Initiative. To address the aforementioned challenges, we have designed the Smart Bilbao strategy. We are working on the Digital Transformation Agenda 2030, from which we are tackling projects aimed at making Bilbao an energy sustainable city through the transformation of the city's energy, electricity, and thermal system. I would now like to outline two major strategic dreams: Bilbao Sustainable City and Digital Bilbao. Both are aimed at tackling climate change using technologies as driving tools. Bilbao Sustainable City is a strategy aimed at transforming the city's energy model, investing in renewable and clean infrastructures and technologies like solar energy, geothermal energy, or hydrothermal energy. Developing new management models and public-private and private-private partnerships. Improving the sewage and water supply network and carrying out correct and optimized sustainable waste management in the city. Therefore, we are fully committed to the future of clean energy and a city with a low carbon footprint. Concerning Bilbao Digital City, over the last few years, Bilbao has been developing an ambitious strategy to digitize the city into a digital native citizenry. Digital transformation is also a challenge for the competitiveness of the city's productive ecosystem. which the city council itself must drive. This transformation is conceived as a niche opportunity for which we seek to make progress in artificial intelligence, big data, the Internet of Things, 5G technologies, and cybersecurity. In short, Bilbao is called to play an active role in the fight against climate change and has an opportunity to position itself as a benchmark in energy transition, simultaneously improving the comfort of its population, reducing its environmental footprint and energy dependence, and strengthening knowledge and competitiveness in this field with an academic and business sector that is already a benchmark. We want a green, digital, and inclusive Bilbao. Furthermore, this ambitious goal must be led by the ecosystem formed by institutions, business fabric, universities, and technology parks. We cannot lose any of the possibilities of our rich and diverse fabric. We have both a need and an historic opportunity for transformation that we will not miss. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mayor Alberto. Let us hear from Mayor Takashima as well. Mayor Takashima, please.
Hello, this is Soichiro Takashima, Mayor of Fukuoka City, Japan. I will introduce examples of city leadership from two viewpoints. The first viewpoint is vision. Since COVID-19 started last year, both citizens and businesses have been scared for the future. I feel it is important for leaders of cities to set out a clear direction and express an optimistic vision. The potential for a new second or third pandemic is real. We now know that infectious diseases are our city's weakness, but I believe in finding new chances in a pinch. We should take this weakness and make a city more resistant to disease than any other. This will become a new sales point. Fukuoka create the infectious disease resilient city plan. We provide incentives to support private businesses that introduce new features such as ventilation systems and touchless technology. Businesses have already responded to our plan. Our private building will finish construction in autumn. It has introduced touchless technology. Now, it is possible to enter the building and reach your destination without touching anything. This includes the restroom and elevators. More buildings are due to be built with these measures. Next slide, please. The second viewpoint is using the strength of cities that are close to their citizens and know the fields well. People often feel uneasy when they first see a new machine or device, but we must make sure that they feel at ease. And that way, we can promote smart technology for climate change, social problems, and technological changes. This is where cities can act as leaders. Cities coordinate between local private businesses, academia, and cities and national government. We can coordinate between them and create new relationships. Then, through proof of concept demonstration, and these citizens can see new ideas firsthand. They can then better understand the challenges that companies face. Fukuoka City provides full support for these demonstrations by the private sector. We recruit projects that use cutting-edge technology to solve social issues and improve citizens' lives, such as AI and IoT. When then fully support the chosen projects. For example, we coordinate with relevant parties to provide testing fields. In this way, we can put citizens' mind at ease. And in the meantime, we can also progress with urban development that uses smart technology. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Takashima. Now let us hear from Mr. Chintan. Mr. Chintan, please.
Thank you for the invite. So my topic is Fit for Many Futures, and I am Chintan Raveshia, and I lead the city's business in Southeast Asia for Arup, a multidisciplinary global design and engineering consultancy. Our founder, Sir Ove Arup, started Arup in London around 75 years back, and it's been 50 years that we have been working in Southeast Asia, advising governments like yourselves, investors, asset owners, to positively shape the built environment. Now, to frame the discussion on cities, I've used the title Fit for Many Futures. And in the next 4 to 5 minutes, I'll take you through my thought process and the reasoning behind it, and how certain disruptions in time catalyze the way we act for our futures. So the next slide shows a city is more than a place in space. It is a journey in time that is owned, appropriated, and constantly changing by its users. And that's us, we the citizens. But what do we mean by time? So the next slide talks about the opening video. The opening video that most of you must have seen, which is part of a longer, beautiful compilation, posits the question of the future and highlights that the choices that we make will indeed shape our future. And that's because time is linear, but the opportunities are infinite. So everything that we have lived or are living feels linear, since we all took certain decisions and made choices in our life to get to where we are. And every time we make a choice from here on, it changes our future. So here's where we come as city planners and designers. We need to be able to plan and design a city to be flexible enough to work with these n number of possibilities. It needs to be fit for many futures. And alongside those choices, there are some constants, which I call disruptors, the ones that change the course of time. And there are two kinds of disruptors according to me. Some of them are known and some unknown. But within the known disruptors, there are some that are short and sharp. For example, the car-free Sundays in Jakarta that change the parts of the cities dramatically for a day, like a festival almost. The daily life of the city is disrupted for that day to have a positive outcome where people are out on the streets and owning the city. So you can have positive responses on disruptions. But there are also extended disruptions, such as climate change and unknowns like COVID-19. These change the landscape of our urban systems and indeed our individual behaviors. So how do we work with these disruptors? And that's where the tools come in. Now, close to 15 years back, when resilience wasn't even mainstream terminology as yet, Arup developed the City Resilience Framework for the Rockefeller Foundation, which is being used as a tool in various cities across the world to measure resilience of the society, bottom up, as well as the city systems, top down, and the ability to not just bounce back, but bounce forward post-disruption. But then there are also digital tools. Digitalization has changed across in the last 15 years so much. So we now have the technology to develop digital twins of existing as well as future cities. We can model, predict how cities may react during disruptions amid various future scenarios. This helps us to plan our cities to be more resilient with the ability to bounce forward quicker. The images on the next slide talks about how technology not only can predict how systems will react during disruptions, such as a tsunami or a sea level rise, but also is able to predict how people and our behaviors would change with such disruptions. For example, our Neuron City work that we did in Hong Kong. But the critical question to consider is, who are we doing this for? It's not just us, you and me, humans, but also everyone who lives and breathes on this planet. The nature, the green, the animals, the birds. This is how we developed a brief when we started our work on planning the 256,000 hectares land for the Indonesian new capital city in 2019, for example. And as we speak, various amazing organizations in Indonesia are successfully developing detailed urban designs to fit in that big master plan framework. Our premise then was simple. We used all our tools, technology, and predictions for climate change and sea level rise to tell us where not to build. Our primary aim was to enhance nature, rebuild the wild, work with the existing residents to develop the first 21st century city in the climate emergency era. So we can debate all that we want on the future of our cities. But just like this image, if we are not able to make our city feel like home, and that's an Indonesia capital city example, we have failed. As cities continue to grow and become homes to large populations, we need to ensure that they are resilient for future disruptions. We need to plan for and design cities where human and natural systems do not just cohabit, but co-evolve and flourish together. Perhaps if we make our cities resilient this way, we'll be fit for many futures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chintan. To end the speaker's sharing, may I invite Mr. Loh to share. Mr. Loh, please.
Thank you. Hello all, good evening. I'm very happy to be here to share my views on this very distinguished panel. Over the past year, the world has been preoccupied with COVID-19, which has caused immense suffering and hardship. But amidst the challenging environment, I remain optimistic and believe there are good grounds for cities to face the future with confidence. Let me share 4 reasons for my views. First, COVID-19 brought about unprecedented challenges, but it also demonstrated the immense human capacity for innovation. The transition to working from home, the use of virtual conferences like the one we are having now, and rapid development and rollout of vaccines are examples of human resilience and innovation. The pandemic has caused significant disruption, but the experience of dealing with COVID-19 will also make cities around the world more resilient and better prepared to deal with the next pandemic and other trans-border issues. Second, sustainability has become much more mainstream. While climate change continues to pose an existential threat for many cities, international consensus on climate change has grown exponentially since the first World City Summit in 2008. Although there is much that needs to be done, the change in mindsets internationally gives one room for optimism. Third, technological advancement is dramatically improving the lives of people. The pandemic has further accelerated the adoption of e-commerce and evolution of new business models, powered by digitalization and AI. Data analytics and hyper-connectivity, which will be further enhanced by 5G technology, will allow governments to provide even better services and companies to provide even more customized solutions. Of course, there are challenges we would have to manage, including data privacy and cybersecurity. But we now have better tools to make cities even more vibrant, efficient, and sustainable. Fourth, realizing these goals will require the public, private, and people sectors to work hand in hand, as articulated in SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. And we're seeing more and more examples of such partnerships. Keppel's mission is to provide solutions for sustainable urbanization. We have put sustainability at the core of our strategy and have been contributing to sustainable development in many Asian cities over the years. They say that a picture speaks 1,000 words. So let me share a few images which showcase Keppel's solutions. Keppel started out shortly after Singapore's independence as a ship repair yard. This is an aerial photo of our shipyard at Keppel Bay in the 1990s. As Singapore's city centre expanded, we moved our yard to the western end of Singapore and converted the land use of our yard. Today, the former yard has been transformed into a jewel on Singapore's southern coast, combining work, live, and play elements in a beautiful waterfront environment. Beyond the real estate development, we are focused on environmental conservation, both on land and in the sea. Visitors to Keppel Bay today are often impressed by the rich coral and marine life in these waters just minutes away from Singapore's CBD. Another example is the Sino-Singapore Tianjin Eco-City, which Mr. Yang Baoqun was actively involved in earlier. This is a high-level government-to-government project between Singapore and China to develop a model for sustainable urbanization, with a comprehensive set of KPIs covering various aspects of sustainability, such as green transport and renewable energy usage. Keppel leads the Singapore consortium in developing the eco-city. The site chosen for the city, as you can see from the photo, used to be barren, saline, and alkaline land with salt farms and a toxic sewage pond. Here is a photo of the eco-city today, where the former wasteland has been transformed into a smart and sustainable city, incorporating smart city solutions, green buildings, renewables, and water savings. It is a good example of how the public and private sectors across countries can collaborate to drive sustainable development. Finally, I would like to share with you a project that Keppel is working on, leveraging our capabilities in offshore and marine and urban development, namely nearshore urban developments, or floating cities for short. I will not go into details here, but we have the technology and capabilities to build floating cities which can address both land scarcity as well as the threat of rising sea levels in coastal areas. We are currently exploring how such nearshore developments can be built in Singapore. These same capabilities can also be applied in other coastal cities such as Hong Kong, Manila, or Mumbai. This is not a far-fetched idea. In fact, the UN Habitat has identified floating cities as possible solutions to climate change threats facing urban areas. I cite this as illustrations of how governments and companies can work together on many innovative and sustainable projects. We look forward to further deepening collaboration with city governments as we build a sustainable future together. Thank you.
Thank you, our esteemed speakers, for your sharing. May I now invite Professor Chan for the moderated discussion. Professor, the floor is yours. Professor Chan,
Sorry.
I think you're currently
typical
muted.
webinar online conference hazard. Good afternoon to all of you, or good morning if you are in Europe, and good evening if you, wherever you are, I think in the United States. First of all, I would like to thank our elected leaders, the officials, and our corporate leaders who spoke just now. You know, we heard so many progressive, forward-looking views and innovative ideas on how to face the two most challenging issues of our times. One is, of course, an existential challenge, which is climate change. And the second is the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, which is immediate, all-embracing, devastating for health, for the economy, and also as a social issue. We've heard quite a few ideas, and I would like now to pose some questions to our esteemed speakers. Of course, we know that climate change is linked to the pandemic, or the pandemic is linked to climate change. And unless we tackle climate change with urgency, with global warming, you know, it is possible we are likely to see more pathogens that will emerge. So there's a greater urgency for us to deal with this issue. I'd like to pose the first question to my good friend, Governor Ridwan Kamil, who was an excellent mayor in Bandung City, which really became the platform for him to be elected, and elected really quite roundly to be the governor of the province of West Java. Governor Ridwan, you have been, in fact, a very forward-looking and very innovative city leader dealing with technologies. In your speech, you talked of, in your presentation, you talked of the different ways that the West Java province has, in fact, approached some of the issues of climate change. You mentioned, in fact, your renewable energy initiative. You talked also of, your hydrology solutions. You have a blueprint to deal with disruptions. Can you tell us in what one or two detailed technology solutions are that you have tried to introduce? And also, because you are a people man, how do you persuade and sell your ideas to the people in your province?
Yes. Thank you, Professor. I think, especially during this COVID pandemic, we learned one fundamental change is now people are forced to transform to digital lifestyle. Before, digital is more optional, Professor, yeah. But now it's more like mandatory. For example, my mom, 82 years old, now send me the emoticon through the mobile phone. She learned during the COVID time, yeah, because we cannot meet in person. So many digital migrant is become the new digital society. The good side of this transformation forced by COVID is people try to be productive with less mobility. So this is a good sign in terms of new mindset. If we can still be productive, innovative, without too much of mobility, rely too much on transportation, machinery, vehicle, then it means we are using less fuels, less things that we used to be used during our comfort time before COVID. So I think this is a really game changer in West Java. So we use this the bright side of disruption into the new lifestyle. For example, we now using this IoT, Internet of Things, to feed the fish. Yeah, before people need to use motorbike and use cars to transform fish food to the fish farm because it's so big. Yeah, so now they're using this. Coba tampilkan e-fisheries. They just put this container of food fish to hundreds of catfish farm, and just by the tap of one mobile phone, the whole container can project the food using the sensor. So it creates more economy, more productivity, less mobility. And if you can imagine this less mobility can become the new lifestyle, I think we can reduce the numbers of unnecessary use of resources, especially fuel, and creating a much better climate change program that we are fighting for. And in second question, how to convince in Indonesian culture, Professor, they need proof to the theory. That's why I always creating what I call example, best practice to learn that the example will convince more instead of just talking. We created what we call this digital village, for example. I created a program, post-COVID economy called Millennial Farmers, for example, asking the young people that used to be migrate to city. I said, can you come back to rural area, but with your digital skill, you can live without rely too much on urban context, but you can make money as much as you get in the city, because you can sell your product in the rural to the world. Yeah. So live in the village, but you have a city income. So this is my campaign. We call it Petani Millennial or Millennial Farmers. This is the new way of creating an example, creating a new economy through my leadership. So I think more or less that is what we have in West Java. I will continue to show more example. For example, as I said before, Professor, I am the first public leader who use EV as an official car, for example. Now, I make mandatory to all my staff. I said no more budget to buy fuel cars, gasoline car. West Java, 100% budget to buy electric vehicle. And this resonance to the whole Indonesia. And now, my example of using electric vehicle will become a benchmark of the new lifestyle of climate-friendly kind of culture. So I think that would be the answer and example from West Java, Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Governor Ridwan. My next question is for Mr. Yang Baojun. Mr. Yang, you've been very eloquent about carbon peak and carbon neutrality. Would you care to answer this question? How do we account, how do you plan for the needs of generations who are yet unborn in our designs for resilient cities?
好，谢谢主持人。我想啊，就是我们如何
Thank you for your questions. If we think about future development, we have to give our cities tools to face those challenges and risks. In China, we talk about resilient cities development to combat any kind of unpredictable risks. So I think I can give you a good example. In China, we are talking about building a resilient city, hydro resilient city. We know that in China, a lot of cities are lacking of water resources, and they have other part of it becomes an important issue that we cannot overlook. So we are talking about promoting sponge city development. And when we talk about that, we are talking about how we can reserve more water, how we can recycle and reuse those waters, and how we can waste less water to control better water resources, so that the polluted water can be quickly clarified and be reused, and we can also have a secured source of water usage. So this kind of hydraulic development is very critical and very important for carbon neutral target. And I think this is one of the very good projects I would do. Since 2014, the Chinese government has put forth many measures to build this type of cities. The government city has put in a lot of resources and money. So every city, it has a lot of investment in 30 cities in the world, whether you are in big, small, or intermediate sizes. We have strived to build to cover all the areas with this type of sponge cities. For example, in the northwest area, we have a lot of drought issues, and in order to prevent those water wastage and also to preserve more water, we have to have a system that can preserve better. In the south, we have different kind of hydraulic problem. We have lacking of water resources, and this is a type of water preservation that we put in mind when we design a city. So when we build a city, we have to have infrastructures to at the same time build the infrastructure and harmoniously build the green infrastructure system. So in the whole entire country, we have already completed 40,000 projects, and that has become a very good network to help many cities to preserve water. And in return, we can see that our capability of facing the disaster has increased dramatically, and also we can give better quality of life to our people. And in the late survey done in 2018 by the United Nations, it also mentioned that China's sponge cities concept is a very good solution, and it's a example that we can follow. In the 14 5-year period, the Chinese government once again strengthened the importance of this project. The central government has put in more money to support that. In the future, there'll be 50 more cities that will use the same plan, and this is something that we strive to do the best. We hope that we can improve not only in China but the world's city development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. My next question is for Dr. von Amsberg from AIIB. Dr. von Amsberg, how can cities and countries work with international organizations such as yours to invest and adopt affordable solutions for climate change?
Thank you very much. Of course, the multilateral development banks have for decades been supporting their member countries, and in particular cities, with a combination of financing, technical assistance, and policy advice to implement both the investments and the policy reforms that go along with them. In the case of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, the AIIB, we are just more focused on infrastructure and, if I may say, infrastructure for tomorrow, and therefore directly focused on the agenda we're discussing here. So we prioritize within the broad needs of our member countries and of cities, infrastructure investment. We prioritize urban investment, and we prioritize climate finance. The member countries that have formed AIIB, now 103 approved members we have given us a very clear mandate to invest in infrastructure and to prioritize green infrastructure that is sustainable and compatible with the imperative to reach the important targets of the Paris Agreement. So we finance long-term infrastructure, transport, flood control, water, sanitation, energy. And simply by being able to provide long-term financing at affordable rates, we will enable, and we do enable our clients, meaning both countries, but in particular cities, to scale up investments, to go beyond the sort of incremental investment and take the bigger leaps that are possible when you have access to a larger investment finance through multilateral development banks. We have a target to put 50% of our financing into climate finance. So we will look at any proposals that deal with either adaptation or mitigation of climate risks as our priority. And we also help cities and countries bring private capital into infrastructure. Generally, despite much talk and much conversation, there has been very little private capital gone into developing country infrastructure, and multilateral development banks can play a role mitigating risks, working with public sector sponsors to reduce policy risks, political risk, and thereby bring private capital into those investments. Just to mention some examples, in some cases we have financed urban infrastructure with backing by the sovereign. We've financed urban metro rail in Mumbai, Bangalore in India, for example, to mention two cities. We've also financed, together with the World Bank, flood control in Manila, a city that is already severely impacted by severe weather events and flooding. But we've also, and that I want to close with, financed urban investments that are not backed by the sovereign government, but are really undertaken on the credit strength of the local government. For example, in Izmir in Turkey, we've financed expansion of the urban rail system, the metro system, on the credit of the municipality alone. And we're very proud of that and see that as a model that we can use in more countries and more cities to help scale up urban investment that's so badly needed for the challenges coming both out of the pandemic, but of course tackling climate change. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Aburto from Bilbao. Mayor, you spoke of digital Bilbao and sustainable Bilbao in your presentation. Let me ask you, how will Bilbao be affected by climate change? And what are some of the technological solutions the city is using to adapt to climate change?
Well, Bilbao is not an island independent from the rest of the world, and therefore it is and will be continue to be affected by climate change, just like other cities in the world, with the particularities, of course, of its geographical location. Our commitment to the mitigation of the greenhouse effect and the fight against climate change has led us to pilot new technologies and management models at the strategic points in the city, as well to deploy energy infrastructure in our new developments, such as fifth generation district heating system based on geothermal and hydrothermal, as well to explore new models of public-private collaboration. And moreover, we are drawing lessons from all this to develop a long-term city vision, Energy Vision 2050. These experiences and projects are materialized in a strategic space for the city, what we call a Smart Green Zorrozaurre Island, is the island of talent, the island of Bilbao. A macro project with different phases and time horizons has allowed us to create an island and recover more than 800,000 square meters as a strategic space for the city's future linked to sustainability, knowledge, innovation, and new strategies to do better the quality of life of our citizens. We are building a new space in the city, and this allows us to include the digital perspective from the outset, with the advantages that this entails in areas such as energy consumption in buildings, energy lighting in public spaces, or the use of future 5G networks for the implementation of autonomous vehicles. Intensive work is currently underway to attract university and business activity to the area, combined with the urban development of the project itself. The Atelier project and the Dushi project are being developed on the island of Zorrozaurre. These two projects are European projects. Atelier is a partnership of 30 partners from 11 different countries and is led by two lighthouse cities, Amsterdam and Bilbao, and has a budget of 23 million. The project revolves around the positive energy district concept, that is a set of 3 or more buildings that share energy and generate more energy than they consume. In the project framework, we will carry out 3 pilots with broad coverage of the island of Zorrozaurre, and where we aspire to create a zero emissions space by 2050. Along the same lines as the Atelier project is the Sustainable and Integrated Urban Development, DUSI implementation plan in the Zorrozaurre area, a sustainable and integrated development strategy co-financed by the European Union with a budget of 18.6 million. The strategy focuses on 4 objectives: improving the use and quality of ICT and facilitating access to them, low carbon economy, preserving and protecting the environment and promoting resource efficiency, and the fourth one, promoting social inclusion and the fight against poverty and discrimination. Among the actions envisaged are the following: the contamination of land that will later be disposed or relocated, construction of storm tanks, 2 of them, construction of retaining wall for rising water levels, district heating system that guarantees an adequate level of comfort and generates 0 emissions. They are all focused on the sustainable urban development of strategic areas for the city's future, aimed at continuing to be a Bilbao for all people, leading the transformation of the city towards an economic, environmental, digital, and social transformation that allows an increasingly cohesive Bilbao, increasingly cohesive, committed to sustainability, with quality of life for everyone, with quality services that reach all neighborhoods, attractive for investment and job creation, and with solid shared values. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mayor Arturo. Mayor Takashima from Fukuoka City. Mayor, can you tell us some of the challenges of working with different sectors in your city to adopt technology solutions? You did mention in your remarks that, when you had smart cities introduced, people were a bit nervous about the technology. And we know an aging population is a big part of Japanese society, So could you just tell us how you work with the different sectors and how do you promote technology adoption and utilization so that you can address the challenges of climate change?
Thank you, Professor Chan. As a mature society, Japan is full of laws and regulations. One challenge is when we try to relax existing laws to introduce new technology, existing businesses with vested interest are often protected by these laws. So they use political influence to try to stop innovations when they see new technology or services as a threat. Yet, on the other hand, new companies in Japan don't often get involved in politics. They only think economically. They think if they just make a good product or service for people, it will be popular. But I would like them to show more interest in politics and the government. Government controls the regulations affecting them. I would like them to know more about the system and show an interest in campaigning and lobbying. Also, our goal is not just utilization of new technology. It is only a means to an end. We shouldn't appeal the innovations of technology, but we should appeal the greater cause that technology can lead to, like how they can solve climate change and other social issues. That way, society will favor innovation more, and it will be easier to implement new technology in society. This is the way we think when we support new businesses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Now, we are a little past our time, but I'm going to try and ask 2 more questions. And one is to Mr. Chintan. Mr. Chintan, the 50 years of Arup, you've been in the region. What are the 3 big issues you see driven by climate change that the region that our cities have to deal with?
Thanks for the question, Professor Chan. And Just like Governor Kamil, I'm an architect as well. And funny enough, my response is not going to be around physicality of the city. It's going to be something very different, which is, I think that, and I keep it short, the three most important things I feel is resilience, and I'll talk a bit more on that, equity, and migration. Resilience, and I would say two sides of a coin, because whenever we say resilience, everyone talks about environmental resilience or sustainability, etc. But I'm more here conscious that whilst we can manage that, cities are coming together like this World City Summit to bring people together to exchange technological response. The important thing is social resilience. Empowering people is extremely important to manage, especially in these kind of disruptions that happen, about bringing people together on the journey. And I know the flip side of that is that is only possible when there is enough trust in the system to allow people to feel empowered to do things. So it has to work bottom up, top down, both together all the time. Because if one of them is gone, then the empowerment doesn't happen. Then people all feel that to each its own, and everyone tries to manage the battle on their own. That's a resilience part. The equity is super important at this point in time, as we see. The need for equal access to resources, basic necessities, housing, food, and almost every other person on this panel have spoken in some form or the other about that. Simple aspects of Maslow's law of hierarchy, of providing those needs, have becoming important. And more so now, and even yesterday in the World City Summit, it was highlighted quite a few times that there's a K recovery happening, which is known to all of us post-COVID. And how are we going to manage that when poor are going to get poorer and rich are going to get richer? So one of the responses ends up being nationalism in the country. And then how do you manage that when it comes to cities, which are much more outward facing, when the country works in a very different way? So that equity is an important bit. And connected to all two, and very important, is migration. Formal and informal migration within countries and across nations. So migration is great. It's good. We want that. But how is the migration happening, and what form of migration is happening, is becoming important. While migration is critical for the success of the globalized, interconnected world, it also leads to strains on the cities when you start seeing that happening, and especially when it's informal migration. And then what does that happen in terms of the city planning, city design, but also leading to injustice and social unrest. So in short, I would say resolving the climate emergency through better planning of cities and nations, including better entry points, using just migration or equity as entry points, will be able to come up with a much better resilient society of the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chintan. Chin Hua, last but not least, and now you have the challenge of saying everything very quickly but deeply. My question for you, you've given us a sort of some slides, pictures that say 1,000 words about how Keppel is adapting to the climate change and what you are doing there. How are you mobilizing the technology to adapt to these changes? And let me add something extra. Are these solutions expensive?
Okay, thank you, Heng Chee, for that question. I'll try to keep it very short. I think, as I've shared earlier, Keppel has put sustainability at the core of our strategy. We have set and disclosed targets to reduce our carbon emissions, water and waste intensity, and increase our portfolio of renewable energy assets. But I think beyond that, Keppel is not just, we see sustainability actually as our business. So we will help communities, we will help cities, we will help towns, and we'll help companies, other companies, to be more sustainable themselves. And this is included in our many solutions, whether it's in environmental engineering, it is in connectivity, such as data centers. I spoke earlier about floating cities. I think Keppel as an organization, we have always leveraged technology to provide better solutions for our customers. So I mentioned earlier about floating cities. I think that's a very interesting area that has applications around the world, not just in Singapore. But beyond that, we're looking at another example will be data centers. I think this is an area that Keppel is very involved in. The world needs more data centers as we become smarter, more connected. But at the same time, we're all aware that data centers do have a very large carbon footprint. So Keppel is very involved in developing technologies such as to make data centers more energy efficient. We have tropical data centers, high-rise data centers. We also have data centers that uses harnesses coal energy from regasification. And of course, we also have, for Keppel, we have a saying, we are involved in anything that floats, and if it doesn't float, we'll make it float. So we also have solutions on floating data center parks that can use seawater to cool. And we are also looking at using hydrogen as a fuel source to power our data center. So in short, technology is very important to us as we look to build better solutions for a greener world. Now, are they expensive? I think the reality of it is many of these things that we're doing, like energy efficiency, etc., is actually not expensive. If you do the NPV, net present value, actually the benefits, the economic benefits, very often far outweigh the cost. But of course, there are some technologies such as carbon capture, such as creating green hydrogen, green ammonia. Those are still probably not at the stage where it is commercially viable because the technology is not quite there yet. But we believe that we got to continue working on it because in 5 to 10 years or less, these technologies will become economically viable.
Well, thank you very much, Chin Hua. We have really overrun our time, but I would want to take a moment to thank our distinguished speakers all for their very robust, spirited, and in fact, very innovative and exciting contributions to our thinking on this particular topic. Thank you.
I'd like to thank our esteemed speakers and moderator for the insightful discussion. We have come to the end of this session, but playbacks will be available in the virtual platform resource gallery in a few hours. Do continue to join us at our next sessions. And before you leave, please use the QR code or link to fill in our feedback form. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.